So a lot of what these gentlemen were describing are all the real heavy lifting that occurs. As Craig already pointed out, and as some of the other gentlemen already pointed out, the actual act of doing estate planning is kind of a culmination event. You know, we talk about in our office when folks come in, what are your goals? What have you done all the heavy lifting that these gentlemen have already described? And I'll give you an example of what happens when you don't do the heavy lifting. I had a client come in, and we're there signing the estate plan, his second marriage, and he tells his wife is coming in, we're signing together, and I've assumed the whole time, you know, they've had a communication about what they wanted to do. And we're sitting there at the table, and he says to his wife, or she says, well, what's happening here? Oh, we're doing the estate planning. Well, what's happened? Well, I'm giving all the assets to my kids from the prior marriage. And believe me, you don't want to have that discussion while you're at the signing appointment. And of course, I'm looking like, you know, so I think the important part to stress is what these gentlemen have already described here is you want to be thinking about these goals, and hopefully when you come to see me or your attorney and your other advisors, a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done, and now you have an opportunity to really put into action a lot of the neat things we can do with the estate planning and financial planning. So with that said, I'm going to assume that you're sitting here and you've done all the hard work of figuring out what the goals, what are the succession plan, are kids involved in the business, who's involved in the business of the 3 children, for example, is it one, is it all of them? And I kind of come at this from a little bit of a unique perspective because my wife just started as president of her family's winery. She's working there for 10 years in Napa Valley, and we own Paulmeyer Winery, and her father is now calling her saying, hey, you know, I'm still relevant, you can call me for advice every once in a while. So it's a process, and I think that in our own family we try to stress that. I think these gentlemen have tried to stress that. Assuming you get to the point in the process where you say, hey, why am I doing this planning? Well, and you want to keep it in the family, here's the numbers right here. Is if you're sitting here and you are looking at getting vineyards or wineries to the next generation, you look at the price of land in places like Sonoma and Napa, and the pressure will be coming here to Lake County as well. Today I just got news of a sale in Napa County that 600 acres Stagecoach Vineyard sold to Gallo, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was a $250 million transaction. So you're talking about those types of prices when you previously didn't have to think about estate taxes. Now all of a sudden estate taxes are real, and these are the numbers right here. Single, married, everything beyond that 40%. You're talking about selling your assets in order to satisfy, and as Craig already said, you don't have to do any planning. The government's already done it for you. So really, if you get to the point where succession planning and all the hard work has been done, and this is your main nut to crack, there's lots of great strategies to do it, but I think that it's important to keep these types of numbers in mind. All right. So here's someone referenced Silicon Valley Bank previously, and they do the great state of the business, and the vast majority of family-owned winery businesses, wineries, vineyards, have done absolutely no planning, and that's not uncommon. We have clients all up and down the state of California that come in, and it's not uncommon for me to see clients in their late 70s coming in saying, I don't even have a basic trust or a will, and here you are with assets that are worth, you know, 10, 15, 20 million dollars. So not having the discussion is a very common thing. And so when we're seeing why people don't do planning, I think Jay and Kai and Craig identified a lot of the issues, but really for me, most clients, they may say it a different way, but it really boils down to control and cash flow. And I would say that 95% of the clients that walk into our office feel like they do this planning, they're giving up control of the thing that they created, and they're potentially losing the ability to have their lifestyle or have their lifestyle impacted by the loss of cash flow off of doing that. I think the other thing that is really difficult for folks is, and it was identified, is when you're doing this planning, it's pretty easy to say, okay, well, everything goes equally to the kids, but you know, I think a number one thing that a lot of people forget is fair isn't always what's equitable. I take our own family as an example. We have my wife is one of 3 children, the only one working in the business. Well, is that appropriate? You know, I think these are the types of discussions that I think hinder a lot of the forward movement in the planning. So assuming you can get to the point where you feel comfortable having this discussion, I was going to go dip really quick down into the weeds, and Kai talked a little bit about the trust that he had done, and I'll tell you the most common technique that we see is what's referred to as an IDGIT, and really what this device does is it allows the first generation to have a trust set up that really allows that trust to buy them out of the business, and it ultimately means the kids are buying them out of the business. So in many transactions, you see the third party is a buyer. You know, for example, Jan Krupp at Stagecoach sale, Gallo bought him out of his business. That was his succession plan. But really, the main idea of when you're doing this planning is to leverage devices that give you the ability to retain a certain level of control if you're the first generation and to maintain cash flow. So in my opinion, this is the premier device that we see most of our clients use. The techniques change, the story remains the same. Cash flow control. And really, whatever vehicle you're going to use, and assuming you've created the proper structure, the vehicle that you want to use, I believe, and most of our clients believe, you want it to be able to maintain the cash flow needs that you have, and I think that starts with the discussion that Jay identified already. What are your financial needs? What are your planning needs for the rest of your life as you transition out of this business and you see it go from G1 to G2 or G2 to G3? And really, then can we create a device that allows for appropriate meting out of responsibility to the second generation or even the third generation? So I think that when you're thinking about structuring the estate plan, to me, this is what really boils down to for most of our clients, is how do I maintain the financial needs and how do I maintain some measure of control? And fortunately, in our situation, my father-in-law, all he cares about is the first bullet point. He doesn't care about the second bullet point. He said, whatever, I don't care what you guys do with this business, just make sure the checks arrive to my house in Hawaii. No pressure, though. So, you know, I think we're already running over time. I would just really stress, I think what these gentlemen are saying, I can sit here and talk about techniques, and we talk about it all over the state to other attorneys, but for everyone sitting in this room, having the discussions that these gentlemen already had, that's where the real heavy lifting takes place. So, with that, I think, Jeff.